So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the West Sussex Record Office. My name's Wendy Walker, and I'm the County Archivist for West Sussex. And I'm very pleased to welcome you here tonight to another of our West Sussex Unwrapped live events. Just a few words of housekeeping before we start. We will be recording this event, and we're going to put it up on YouTube in a few days' time, so that if you want to have another look or recommend it to friends and family, please feel free to do so. If you've got any questions as we go through, if you could put them in the chat box, and we'll be monitoring that as we go through this evening. Over the last 2 years, we've been working with our colleagues in Screen Archive South East, exploring our joint collections and looking at themes and topics and places that are common to both. And we are now in our third series, and this year we're running a series of live events over the course of the next 6 months. This evening we're going to focus on Worthing and particularly on the changing face of Worthing. And we're looking at a series of archive films starting in 1898 and going through the 1960s. This event's taking place at the same time as an exhibition, a major exhibition at Worthing Museum, a trip to Worthing, Downs, Town and Sea. And that exhibition is going to be on until the 19th of June. So if you haven't already been, I would urge you to go and take a look. We've got some wonderful archive film footage for you tonight. You may find that the quality varies, and that's partly due to the age of the films themselves, but it may also be dependent on your internet connection. If you find that you have trouble viewing part of it at one stage, remember that you can have another look on YouTube as from next week. We've got 2 speakers with us tonight, 2 of my favourite people. And I'm delighted to introduce you to Dr. Frank Gray, who's the Director of Screen Archive South East, and Martin Hayes, the West Sussex County Local Studies Librarian. Together, their knowledge of the film collections and the history of Worthing is a unique combination. And I'm now going to pass you over to Frank to begin the evening.
Thank you, Wendy. It's a real pleasure to be here. There's always a bit of trepidation whether we're going to make our webinar work, but I think we are tonight, he says with crossed fingers. Yes, I'm a film historian, and I have been for over 30 years. And the research and the writing which I've done is largely focused on filmmaking in Sussex. And for me, it is an activity which is not just important to the work of Screen Archive South East, which I run, but also to, it's important how we understand this film history, because to look at local or indeed regional film history is still not a very popular subject, but I wish it was, because to me it just helps to bring films, for example, in our collection to life. Martin, say something about yourself.
Okay, Frank. Yes, and good evening, everybody. Well, I've been trained as a librarian, as Wendy mentioned, but I did a history degree first at London University, and I've had 40 wonderful years as a specialist local studies librarian. And 30 of those years were at Worthing Library, which were a fantastic time where we collected so many different things. So that's my background. I know Worthing hopefully as well as most people, and I've put a script together, obviously a commentary on all the fantastic films you're going to see this evening. So I'll pass back to Frank now to talk a little bit about Screen Archive South East and the films in general.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, Screen Archive South East. Well, we're part of the University of Brighton, and we're based at the university and at West Sussex Record Office in Chichester. And as a regional film archive, we collect, preserve, digitize, and catalogue moving images made here, here being Kent, Surrey, and Sussex. The films in our collection date from the 1890s to the present and have been made by everyone, by individuals, artists, families, businesses, local authorities, the armed forces, and they reflect the changing nature of life in the region, and of course, the many different uses of film. And of course, what's so important for us, given the inherent fragility of film, is that for each film in our collection, we work to preserve it for use in the future. Our website, of course, provides the best guide you can have to our collection and to our work. Now, this evening, we'll be looking at some examples from our Worthing film collection, and it represents many different aspects of the town's history beginning in 1898. These are primarily amateur films from the 20s to the 60s, and they're particularly important as they chronicle many of the changes that now define its current character. Now, an important aspect of our work is collaboration with historians, and through this helps us to really begin to understand the nature of the films in our care. And this is very evident tonight, given our collaboration with Martin. His deep knowledge of Worthing has become so valuable to our understanding of our Worthing collection. So, Martin, we're getting close to looking at the first compilation, aren't we?
Yes, brilliant. Okay, can't wait. So, let me introduce the first section, or in fact, an overview of what we're going to do this evening. Well, the Screen Archive Southeast team and I have selected the best extracts from the Worthing films currently held by them, including some very recent donations via Worthing Museum, which were very welcome indeed. We put them into 5 themes: seaside, 1930s town, weather, growing post-war town, that's post-1945, of course, and finally, town centre development. Each theme is around about 5 or 6 minutes long. There is a chat box, just for fun. It's that strange square at the bottom of your screen, which says chat underneath it. I'll be asking some tricky questions in most sections just to test your knowledge of Worthing and its history. And you can answer via this chat box, or you can just do it informally between yourselves if you don't want to test yourself technologically. So we move on to our first theme, Seaside Resort. I'll do a little bit of general introduction and hand over to Frank for the technical stuff about the film. In our first sequence then, on the seaside, we start with the earliest film known of Worthing, The Lifeboat, in 1898, which is just remarkable. Then we'll enjoy some early 1930s views of the seafront and beach, which I'd never seen before, followed by a family holiday on the beach just before the First World War, around 1939 and into 1940. And we'll end with a very different look at a 1960s carnival that we know little about, really. Perhaps you can help us with all these things. You can use the chat box to comment on any of the films as well. So I'm going to hand back to Frank now to talk about this footage and the filmmakers.
Thank you, Martin. Yes, the first film this evening, and we're just showing a small extract from it, it is very special because we think it's the earliest surviving film of Worthing. It was made by William Kennedy Laurie Dixon, a Scotsman who worked at the Edison Laboratory in West Orange, New Jersey, across the 1880s and early 1890s. And he is credited with making the world's first viable 35mm film camera and projector. And for 2 days in April 1898, he was in Worthing and he made 7 films. And so we're showing a little bit of one of those films. It's followed by a film of Worthing made in 1934 by the Nightingale family. The Nightingale family of Crawley made films consistently from the 20s to the 80s. And they chronicle family celebrations, gatherings, holidays, outings. So this provides us with insight into just one aspect of this interesting film collection from Crawley. Next, a film made by Jeffrey Corder, also in the 30s. He was an employee of Kodak, and with his wife, they made family films, chronicling all the places they would visit in Sussex and across the country. And then finally, as Martin has already mentioned, our film of the Carnival, and it's a Ewing film, which came to us from Worthing Museum. I'll say a bit more about Ewing films later on in our webinar this evening. So I think we're ready to start, aren't you, Martin?
Yeah, pretty much. Just before we launch the film, I will ask the very first question from this of the evening, which is, what unusual vehicle can you see stationary in front of the Towers building? People will know generally the Towers, or better known as Dolphin Lodge in Grand Avenue for local people. Have a look at the front of the building down in the Grand Avenue sort of Marine Parade junction. There is a strange vehicle there. If you can tell me what it is, type your answer in the chat box when you come to it. It's in the second bit of the film. So, Frank, I think we're ready to play the first series of clips then, please, on Seaside Resort. And while Frank is getting these ready, I'll mention that we'll be seeing Worthing's second lifeboat, the Henry Harris, which will be coming out, originally called the Jane, and it will be coming out of the lifeboat station on Marine Parade. So watch out for this. It's a very short clip. So, and here it comes. It's amazing. Actually, the lifeboat station is still there today. You can see it now, just 200 yards beyond the pier. Note the lifeboat men in their cork jackets there as well, amazingly rudimentary, such a brave thing to do, to go out and rescue people in their sort of basic equipment. So as I say, the lifeboat station's still there. It's got a unique feature, a lookout tower. So if you haven't seen it, next time you're on the seafront, go and have a look. Then we switch to the early 1930s, and I love this footage because it shows how far the fashions have changed, how much shorter the dresses have become, for example. The iconic hats, the typical 1930s hats and caps and so on. So here we are in Marine Parade. We're looking west over here towards Grand Avenue at the moment, from roughly, I think, the Heen Road area. And we see the towers in the distance there. We turn back from the same position, really, Heen Road, looking back at the pier. Now we get a bit closer to Grand Avenue, and you can see that large building on the right-hand side was the Hotel Metropole, built around 1894. Developers went bust, and it was converted to flats in 1923, called the Towers in 1924. And here's the stationary vehicle. What's that strange thing you can see right in the foreground on the corner there? Okay, so while you're thinking about that and putting it in the chat box, we move on to the beach itself and the dreaded seaweed, which dominated and plagued Worthing through much of the 20th century. I remember myself through in the 1980s and 90s, what a dreadful smell it was. And there it is, strewn across the place. Oh, this chap seems fascinated by the movie camera. Over he comes. I kept wondering whether he ever fell into the pool of seawater. We'll never know, really. Now we move on to the Lido, as we know it now. But in 1934, it was just a band enclosure, no pool at all. It wasn't converted to the Lido until 1958. And there again, we're looking down at the seafront, loads of seaweed, etc. Over to the pier now, and we're looking at Worthing's famous Dome Cinema, opened in 1910. A little bit towards the corner now, we've got the first purpose-built hotel, the Steen, opened in 1814. And beyond Steen Gardens there, right in the middle of the picture, is the Warnes Hotel, opened in 1899, sadly destroyed by fire much more recently than that. So now we move to the late 1930s, as Frank mentioned earlier, 1939, 1940, the Corder family. Now they were staying in Lancing, so these clips may well be actually on Lancing Beach rather than Worthing. I couldn't tell for sure, but if anyone can spot the location, please let us know. You'll see children huddled in big towels, bathing caps, a sort of typical beach scene as they play around on the seafront. But can you see behind them? There's some buildings there which give us clues. If someone knows what those buildings are and where they are, you know, is this Worthing? Is this Lancing? Exactly where? We'd love to know. I love the fashions here again. The flowery patterned blouses and dresses and so on. Things getting much more modern, I suppose. I'll take a little bit of a breather now, and you can enjoy the sight of the Corder youngsters splashing around with buckets and spades. I mean, it's a timeless scene which could almost be any year between the 1920s and the 1960s. So while you watch them, I'll tell you the sequence will suddenly transform, a stunning transition. So I'll leave you to watch this and come in when we get this rather interesting transition. And here it is. Amazingly, there was color footage, you know, before the First World War, around about the Second World War, 1939-40, and instantly the children almost seemed to come alive, you know, from black and white to kind of almost real people now. And again, it could be any sort of period between the 1920s and the 1960s. But again, the informality that we see now as the war goes on, that's amazing. Now we jump to the mid-60s and the carnival that we know very little about. I mean, we can see early forms of transport, we can see a kilted marching band, but who are they? Who ran the carnival? We think it was about 1964-5. And there's lots of interesting bits and pieces. I'll call out some floats as we see them. So I think that's the last of the marching bands. This is the Picardo School of Dancing. Lots of you might have been there. 93 Rowlands Road it was. And you can see in the background now as it comes down, this is the Towers and Dolphin Lodge again, with the Hall Street, the Hall and Company lorries being used. All kinds of floats coming through now. There's a sort of fencing club, but who are they? There's another Picardo School of Dancing float, which is amazing, really sophisticated. Again, who are all these people? The RNLI, I mean, that's obvious. The Worthing Operatic Society. Now, we have some of their records at the record office, in fact. Another RNLI float there. The Worthing Irish Society with impressive dancing. And so it goes on. Float after float after float. The various ones. This is HMS Caroline, which is now a museum attraction in Belfast, believe it or not, the original. Swandene Hospital appealing for nurses. The Crabtree Hillbillies. Who on earth were they, I wonder? If you know, let us know, please. And then we end with that interesting little fire engine. So there you have that sequence, such a sequence of so many contrasts, the fun-loving 1960s in its heyday, ending it. So I'll have a look at the chat box. Do we have any answers to our question about that vehicle? Someone said, oh, yes. Oh, blimey, there's lots here. Yay, there's a couple of people got it right. Yes. Tramo car is the answer, and Linda Kane has got it right, and that's fantastic. There's another one, it's anonymous, another Martin here has got it right, whoever you are. Someone said steam-driven bus. Someone, Lucy said it's a converted dust cart. Yeah, you're kind of pretty much all right. Yeah, so lots of people got it right. Fantastic. I'm amazed, and I shouldn't be surprised at such a knowledgeable audience that we've got. So Okay, so that's the first theme out of the way. We'll have a look at the next theme now, and this will be 1930s town, and I'll just say a few words about it and then pass to Frank for what he knows about it, and Screen Archive Southeast. So most of the footage is from 1939. The highlights are some wonderful views of South Farm Road level crossing. There's a steam engine, there's glass houses in West Tarry, a very rural looking High Salvington, and also a very scary poster. So I'll leave those thoughts with you, and I'll pass back to Frank for his comments on the actual films themselves.
I just say, just in relationship to our last sequence, it was remarkable when color film arrived in the mid 1930s, and there is this kind of Wizard of Oz moment, because all films until that point had been made in black and white, and then it starts around 1935, and it's really special when you look at a collection such as the Quarter collection, and you see it from the late 20s, black and white, and then suddenly there's this moment. So it makes the 1930s really interesting time for the work of amateur filmmakers. Now, when it comes to the 1930s town, our next sequence, there are two films. The first is interesting to us because it was made by Eric Sparks. He was a Worthing-based filmmaker, member also of the Amateur Cinema League during the 1930s. And he had a real passion for transport, especially for Southern Rail. And he documents all aspects of the work of that railway company, especially the beginnings of electrification in West Sussex. The film which Martin has chosen draws from a film he made at the end of the 1930s, and it's about everyday life in Worthing. And there are many glimpses throughout it of the family firm, Sparks and Son, because they were a local building firm. And the second film returns us to the film By the Nightingales. So, Martin.
Okay, so 1930s town. Before I ask you to launch the actual footage, I've got two questions in this section. Now we're going to see level crossing gates at South Farm Road. Now, in which year were these level crossing gates replaced with controlled lifting barriers? That's the first one. Try not to Google these answers, by the way. Use your knowledge. I did struggle to actually find this one myself on the internet. The second question is, you'll see a fire engine tearing along some central Worthing streets, but can you name all three streets? Because they've actually changed quite a bit since the 1930s. So I'll leave those two questions hanging up. I'll try and flag them up as we go through. Right, Frank, I think we're ready for 1930s town when you're ready to launch it, please. And while this is coming along, I'd say Sparks and Sons builders were doing work on houses in Cross Street. So Eric took the opportunity to film this fascinating footage looking down from the roofs in Cross Street down to the South Farm Road level crossing that we can see there. And Eric neatly dates it for us. And there he is. Yes, 4th of January, 1939. Isn't that fantastic? And now we're looking along Orme Road, parallel to the railway line. And it should swing down in a minute to a fruit and flowers shop. And this was a brand new shop, less than 5 years old, on the corner there. There's also that interesting Worthing West signal box, which had opened in 1877. And here's those fantastic gates that opened and closed. The signal box actually stopped operations in 1988. And here we see an electric train. The line had only been electrified 6 years early, 1933. So these trains were still a novelty. And again, we look down and we learn such a lot. How busy it is. Loads of cyclists. horses and carts, carriages and things. Amazing number of cyclists, actually. Drop side lorries, southbound buses. It's absolutely fantastic. And we're now going to switch to Tarring Road. And there was a diversion here from South Farm Road because of roadworks. And on the corner there was Morris Bailey's General Store. And we're looking down Orme Road now. Then we switch to the other direction, looking along Tarring Street. And there we go. There's a double-decker bus turning into Orme Road. And here's the cause of the diversion. Roadworks where South Farm Road joins Tarring and Tevill Roads, where the mini island is now. I'm sure you all know it. And then a change of direction. So we see a bus coming out of Clifton Road, past the Clifton Arms, and heading for this diversion then. So it's going off towards West Worthing, and then it swings right into Orme Road. And here's a close-up of the actual roadworks themselves. And here's the bus. It's come down Orme Road and it's heading now back towards us and towards the level crossing. It passes the camera and it's going to be coming out opposite Ray Boxall's grocer's shop in a second. Oh, here it comes. It gets held up here, and this bit really excited me, Frank. I'm sure I get overexcited by steam engines being employed, and you'll see a fantastic view of one here. And as the train comes in from the Chichester direction, what's pushing it? Yes, the steam engine. Now look out for the fire engine next. Comes out from Shoreham Shipping Coal Company, but what's that road? Heads up a very busy Central Worthing Road. I'm sure you probably recognise that. Then it heads off down another side road. Now, what are all those? I'll let you think about that. Now we switch to work on the Castle Road rugby ground off St Andrews Road in West Tarring. And I chose this because look at the glasshouse crop industry scenes there. Fantastic. Over to High Salvington now as the final thing. How rural it looks, but we don't know exactly where the locations are. I think we might have seen Firs Road at the top and the first one, and then Salvington Hill. But now certainly we're looking west towards Cissbury. And the camera pans round to the right and you see the beginnings of Cissbury. But where from? I think it's probably the top of Mill Lane or from West Hill. And then we see a family picking. I wonder what they're picking. It's a pretty easy one. Blackberries, of course. And following this footage, we will have the slightly disturbing poster that I mentioned. And it is coming up any second now. It's National Rat Week. Did you know that during the 1930s, every November was designated as, well, a week in November was designated as National Rat Week, encouraging the killing of rats and mice due to the threat of food stocks, and especially as war approached. There's a whole article in Nature magazine about it. If anyone's really interested, I can send you the link. So that finishes this section. Now the answers, let's have a look in the chat box, see what people have guessed for those questions. We got the level crossing gates. Now, gosh, lots of answers. Let's see, late 1970s. No, that's right, that's wrong, Sue. No other guesses. I can tell you the level crossing gates were replaced in February 1961, so pretty early really for controlled lifting barriers. And the fire engine, and let's have a look what the guesses are for those. Carol has guessed Ann Street, Chapel Road and Chatsworth Road, very near, 2 out of 3. And Who else? Pauline has guessed Chapel Road and Chatsworth Road. Again, 2 of those are right. And Lee has guessed Ann Street, Chapel Road and Margate Street, 2 out of 3. No one has got all 3, but I can tell you, oh, someone's changed the guess to Market Street, which actually is correct. So the answer was, it came out of Market Street, past the Shoreham Coal Place, up Chapel Road it went, and then it turned right into Chatsworth Road. The key thing there is that all of the roads were linked up with a high street at that point, which is very different today. They're all kind of, well, certainly Market Street and Ann Street are now sort of cul-de-sacs, they don't go anywhere. So there we go, there's the answers to those. So thank you very much for participating in that. And I will just briefly now introduce the next sequence, which will be on weather, and mention that the highlights are, there's just 2 films. It's a much shorter sequence, this. We've got some 1940 footage of the coldest winter for decades, followed by a 1964 storm, which caused severe flooding of the coast road. I don't think Frank has got anything to add to this. Is that right, Frank? I know that the 1940 footage was made by Eric Sparks, and I think the mysterious Ewing person may have done the 1964 storm. So shall I go on to my question, Frank? Or
before you ask, just to add, it is always serendipitous, isn't it, when you think that there is an individual with a camera and a storm is taking place, and then so it's you know, some of the other, like, you know, a film of a parade. Parades are so common within amateur film collections because it's there and people are excited and they bring their cameras. But wild weather is another thing. So having films like this kind of, I think it's always quite special.
So I'll go on to the question. I've not really got a question for the weather section apart from this one, because I don't know the answer to it. What we need to know is which roads feature in the snowy scenes of lorries helping to clear the snow. I don't actually know the answer to this, so I hope people can look carefully at what we're showing you and give us some ideas, especially even West Tarring residents, as most of the film is shot in West Tarring. Again, put them in the chat box, please, as we go on. So, Frank, I think we're ready to launch the next film. So, weather. So, the winter of 1940, early 1940, was very harsh. On the 23rd of January, we had lows as low as minus 20 degrees in southern England. The Thames was frozen over for 8 miles, and as did the sea at Bognor Regis, and probably in places around Worthing as well. So, and here we are. Here are the scenes of the workmen using the lorries to clear snow, but where the location of these escaped me, I'm afraid. So have a look at these footage, and we genuinely want audience participation here. If anyone recognizes the buildings behind and so on. And then we switch definitely now to West Tarring, looking rather lovely in the snow, the recreation ground. And then you'll recognise the roads, I'm sure. The lovely High Street and those little roads off it. The shops, the Vine public house, and the landlord clearing his paths. People and dogs were all used to walking to local shops for their provision. A little snow was not going to stop them. Whoa, look out, there's a maniac in a van driving at speed down the high street. But no, he survived thanks to Michelin tyres. Other tyres are available. I'm not sure what to make of this slightly disturbing glamour car. If anyone knows anything about it, please let us know. The post office there, in the high street, it was at 2 Parsonage Row at this point, run by Mr. McGugan. The weather unfortunately caused a number of local deaths, but it didn't stop children having a great time. And people used initiative to do all sorts of things and keep their vehicles going, such as wrapping them up in a duvet. Here's the January 1964 storm film. And taking their chances on the seafront? Yes, teenage boys. Who else? I think it's taken from Flashpoint, but do correct me if I'm wrong. And here's the coast road flooded with that classic Saab car in the at the front there, the white one. And then we'll see a yellow Ford Consul with that fantastic wings at the back. I remember those in the 1960s as a young boy. And I'm pretty sure this is the coast road between East Worthing and Lancing, heading towards Brooklands. But again, do correct me if I'm mistaken, and you know other things. We'll have a look at all the chat comments a little bit later on. I'm never quite sure how the filmmaker could actually see where they were going in that footage, but yeah, they seem to have survived. So, do we have any suggestions in the chat box for the streets where the lorries were? Let's have a look. Here we go. Someone says South Street, Tarring, near Canterbury Road. That's Carol. Martin says the Downsview Hotel by the West Worthing Crossing. Front of the old Downview pub, possibly. That's great. We got all these things. Next time I go into town, I shall do a diversion and have a look at these places and compare them, I think, with the footage. So that's marvelous. Thank you very much for those suggestions. Right, we're on to, I think now, Frank, we're on to post-war and the final two sections. So the next section is growing post-war town, post-1945. And I've got a few highlights to mention here, which are road rage in Findon Valley, scary white line painting in Durrington, road workers using a pay cap, Durrington Lane as it used to be, almost unrecognisable, and finally the Grove Lodge interchange before the notorious traffic jams we suffer from daily in Worthing. So those are that's the sort of summary that we'll have. And I think, Frank, you've got some comments on the films and filmmakers.
I do. These three films were all made by Mr. or Ms. Ewing and are all drawn, as Wendy said earlier, from a new collection which recently came to us from Worthing Museum. There are 14 films in the collection, all on standard 8mm, and they're largely from the 1960s. It's a collection which features demolitions, new roadworks, and the arrival, of course, of new housing estates. The films are very topographical in nature, as they reveal the changing nature of the town's built environment.
Just one question this time, and again, I don't know the answer. I'm hoping one of you will do. Towards the end of the Durrington footage of the traffic island, the Littlehampton Road and Durrington Lane traffic island, there's a new building between Littlehampton Road and Muirfield Road. So for anyone in kind of Durrington area, if you can tell me what this new building was, built in the 1960s, the mid 1960s, whatever, that would be fantastic. You might also give yourselves personal challenges to name as many car makes and models as possible, because there are dozens of them here. So I think we're ready to run the next film, please, Frank. While you're doing that and getting that ready, I will say a bit about Findon Valley, which is the first place. It was developed mainly from the 1930s, and then particularly after the war. I'm speaking to you from there now in my late 1940s bungalow. By 1964, the shopping parade seen here had 32 shops, incredible. All four major banks, 3 grocers, a butcher, a fishmonger, the Mayflower Cafe, and my favorite, the Linga Longa snack bar. Loads of cars, A30, A35, I think it was. And look out for a Vauxhall Victor being tailgated by a lorry. Here it comes. Incredibly close. Now we change locations to Durrington and the area around the new boulevard. We saw the Shaftesbury Avenue Bridge there near Durrington Station. Now we're looking, of course, from what I think is from or near the Lloyds Bank Registrar's building, looking northwards up the new boulevard and the Strand Parade shops. Here's the scary demonstration of line painting, 1960s style. No closing off the roads while he carried on working there. Incredibly impressive. And then following the completion of the boulevard, we sort of come a little bit further north here, and they're just doing some finishing off work around here. Lovely Morris Minor there, and I think that's an Austin, isn't it? Ford Consul, is it? Etc. Whizzing around. I think we're looking east. There we go. It was freezing a little bit for me, but it's Terringes Avenue looking towards the Downs. You can see the Downs in the distance. And I'm sure it's taken from an elevated position in Palatine Road there. And then we enjoy seeing the workers finishing off all this in this new road work. I think they're laying new adjacent pathways. And it's fascinating to see how labour intensive all the work was. There's so many of them, but also supported by what was then state-of-the-art hand-operated road rollers, such as this one here. We can see large number of workers here, and following this. Oh gosh, I think he's gone into slow motion. Maybe he's going on a go slow, like our dustbin men at the moment. We've got an ultra modern cement mixer, and here is the unusual thing: the pay cab, which I'd never seen before. Looks like an Austin A35 or A40 van, and it's sort of cash in hand as they're all queuing up to get their wages. Really remarkable. There we go. Check it all there. Now we move even further north than this to see the reconstruction of Littlehampton Road and how a traffic island was created. That's Durrington Lane that we see right up in the top end of the picture there, looking incredibly narrow and rural. This is the island half finished, or even a sort of quarter finished, I think. And we see the site of Centenary House there, that brown field over there in the distance. We've got a better view of it here now. And again, there's Durrington Lane heading northwards towards the middle of Durrington. And lovely cars again. We swing round and we see a glimpse of, again, the glasshouse crop industry that was still hanging on there. And we come in seeing the edge of what's now Oak Grove College on the right-hand side. But here we go. We can see how that island was constructed. And then we see some other classic cars. Here's an Inspector Morse style Jaguar coming around the corner. A milk float heads up Durrington Lane. Electric vehicles decades ahead of their time. Looks like a very scary crossing point here with cars whizzing along the Littlehampton Road and the others taking their chances. It's no wonder there's so many accidents in the 1960s. It's scary stuff. And again, now we get a better view of the glasshouses off Muirfield Road there. And finally, we'll get a sweeping view of the new Littlehampton Road being built left to right. And we get the island finished. And again, there's the Centenary House site, and there's the flowers in the finished roundabout. Looks really good. It's one we all know very well. Here's where I don't know what the new building is to the right of the site office, the black sign. What is that building there in the distance just off Littlehampton Road? Suggestions, please. Now we move on to Grove Lodge. And Grove Lodge itself is hidden behind the wall and the trees on the right. So we're looking north from Broadwater Green up the A24 towards the start of Warren Road. Look bottom left of the screen to see an exciting clash between two minis as they come out. Watch these two minis as they emerge in. He's signaling right. Woo, that was so close. And then the next little sequence, same area, but we now get a better view of houses in Offington Avenue, now something of a rat run for traffic. This time though, note the lodge guarding the main entrance here to what was the Offington House and Estate. The house was originally medieval, rebuilt in the 18th century, and the lodge was probably, I think, 19th century by the look of it. And sadly, it was lost in the road widening scheme. Now we jump over the other side of Grove Lodge to the A27, and we're looking back towards, lovely Ford Anglia there, looking back towards Warren Road and where all the traffic lights are today. It's a very large island with an intersection of several sets of traffic lights. So you all know that. So that ends our penultimate sequence. Now I'll have a look in the chat box to see if we had any idea what the new building is. Let's have a look. Linda says Highdown School, ? Martin says the special school. I'm not sure what the special school is. Lucy says sixth form college. Blimey, got 3. I'm not sure. Another Highdown School from Pauline. Thanks very much. And someone else says it could be a garage. Sue says it could be a garage. So I have to look into that. I shall have to look at some directories and some maps to confirm that. But thank you for those suggestions again. Right, we'll go on to our final sequence now, if that's okay. It's called Developing Town Centre. And again, it showcases our final theme, a trend in the 1960s of out with the old and in with the new. So we'll see the demolition of the remarkable old town hall opened in 1835. We'll see the mayor gleefully swinging a sledgehammer and its destruction. Almost injuring the movie maker, I must say. We'll see some interesting demolition techniques, sort of look away health and safety inspectors. And finally, the more positive transformation of Montague Street into a haven for pedestrians, but ending with a poignant reminder of a lost cinema. So that's generally what you're going to get there. And I think, Frank, you have got some other points to make about the films. So over to you, please.
Yes, Martin. Yes, who made these films? That's my question. That's our question. Because we know nothing about the maker. We have that one word which we assume is the surname. So who was Mr. or Ms. Ewing? Did he, she work for the council, given their obvious interest in the town? And does this relationship account for how close the camera is to the filmed action? Could it be that he, she was a surveyor? Because a theodolite features in many of the films. Theodolite being that optical instrument used to measure angles in the horizontal and vertical planes. So I hope this mystery is going to be solved. Martin.
Okay, thank you very much, Frank. I've got a final 2 questions in our show tonight. The first one is, do you know the year and ideally the month that the old town hall was demolished, and the year when the Odeon Cinema was demolished? Ideally without using the internet again, just test your memory or your knowledge. That would be great. So I'm ready for the first of the clips, please, Frank. And it features demolition of the old town hall, which It was a sad occasion, really, because it was a pre-Victorian building during a month of glorious sunshine by Hall and Company. And we will see the front of the town hall now, viewed from South Street, looking up Chapel Road. The clock there, you can see, survives to this day. And the camera sweeps around to look at Liverpool Road. And all those buildings in Liverpool Road were also demolished at the same time. I'm not exactly sure why. And replaced by an ultra-modern structure later, which houses Subway, Heinz the Jewelers, Chapel House, and Barclays Bank, that sort of sequence. Great footage of cars here, Cortina, etc. Now we're up in the air seeing Chapel Road and Linfield Sweet Shop, which is in Ann Street. So Ann Street came right the way through from the High Street through there. You see how narrow the old town hall is there, though, and also the fact that traffic travelled along Warwick Street as well. And smartens himself up for the camera as we go around. Here we are, hard hat for him. That's the last hard hat I think you'll see in this sequence. And here he goes, the ceremonial wielding of the sledgehammer. Watch out for several attempts before he finally has a very good attempt at maiming the cameraman. We think he survived. And here we go, workman's humour, out of order. From the back of the building now, we're looking at Ann Street with some very scary footage of guys on precarious walls, hammering, and in fact, using pneumatic drills at the top of these things to take everything out. Here's a close-up of the pneumatic drills. So the cameraman quite clearly had official access, or I assume he did, didn't shout up to the workmen to be able to go up there. So that's an interesting thing, something you might pick up on, Frank, actually. Yes, could it be officially sanctioned? There's some really impressive vehicles here, 1960s vehicles. Some of these would have been state of the art at the point. That's an interesting one as well. Huge door, fantastic oak door by the look of it, biting the dust. Followed by really some very sad last knockings of this iconic building as we look down South Street towards the clock that you'll all recognize is still there. Here's Ann Street again. It went right the way through to opposite Knowles there in Chapel Road. You can see the sweet shop behind the guy there as well. And again, we're looking south, of course, down South Street towards the pier again. So they did an amazing job actually clearing the whole site in pretty much a month. And I can give you a big clue about when it was. It was before a major national event took place, just a month. So there's a clue for you if you haven't got it yet. And the final views are really looking down South Street again. And okay, so now we switch over to Montague Street in 1969. And this is the first stage of pedestrianisation. Cars were still allowed down Portland Road. We can see a Morris Minor, I think it was, coming out of the road there briefly before it was opened. And there's the surveyor that Frank mentioned earlier. And he is looking the other way down Montague Street now. And we'll see that shortly. Here it is, looking towards South Street and looking towards the arcade and that area, W.H. Smith's. On the right, we see some interesting shops as well. Woolworths, of course, is, sadly missed. Dolce's shoe shop on the right. Aston's and Timothy White's, the chemists were there. The only one I could spot that's still there is H. Samuel, the jewelers, actually, in 1934, and it was demolished despite being listed by English Heritage. So the two questions that I asked, let's have a last look then at the chat box. And let's see, Carol said my mum worked at Timothy White's, that's nice. And Keith says, one for me. Do you think the Jack Watts films could be tracked down? I didn't know he actually made some films. So that's an interesting one. I will look at that and talk to Frank about that later, because I'm in touch with the family, so we'll see. Right, let's have a look at the questions and the answers here. Right, bear with me. Oh yes, Linda, demolished 1966. Carol, demolished 1966. I know who these people are. They're fantastic volunteers from Worthing Library. You see, they had a distinct advantage there. The month was, of course, June 1966, a month before England won the World Cup. So there we go. That was the big clue. What else? Okay. And when was the Odin demolished? I think Sally was guessing 1972. It was actually much more recently than that. It was, as I say, it was listed by English Heritage in early 1987, but despite that, the owners went ahead and demolished it, claiming in late 1987, before the end of the year, it had been demolished, with the developers claiming that it was unsafe. So there we go. Right, that's the answer. That's my script and my commentary over. I think Frank has now got some brief but interesting and challenging comments to make before we hand back to Wendy Walker, the County Archivist, to round off the evening. So over to you, Frank, first.
Well, for my tailpiece, I'd just like to say how, well, first, thank you, Martin, for giving us your tour. I hope everyone appreciates what a unique tour it is, because very few people have that knowledge. But the point I'd like to make is, are filmmakers today engaging in the same way with our everyday lives in our communities? I hope they are. If they are, I'd like you to contact the archive, Screen Archive Southeast, because we're very conscious of having films across the 20th century, but so few from this century. So I think, having looked at the Worthing program, you know, it would be terrific just to stimulate filmmakers right now to start recording, you know, life in their communities, because we want to see films of now in the future, because it's really important that organically that this history of filmmaking continues, into right now and also into the future. So, Wendy.
Thank you, Frank, and thank you, Martin, as well. It's interesting, your comments at the end, because it's very much something that we're aware of, that actually what you're producing today becomes tomorrow's archive. And I think the issue is that in the digital world, unless we do what we refer to as contemporary collecting, then, you know, this material gets deleted far too soon. So yeah, something to bear in mind. I think it's been a really special night tonight. I've really enjoyed it. And I want to thank all of our audience as well for participating, because that has made it very special for us. And we will be looking at all of your comments and following those up. We'll be able to add more information to the archive itself, and be able to follow up on some of the points that you've raised with us. So I think that's been very special. And we have got just a short feedback questionnaire, which Claire's going to launch shortly. If you're able to fill this in for us before you go, we'd be very grateful. It does help us to understand what you've enjoyed, what we could do better, and to know a bit more about you. So if you could do that, that would be wonderful. Our Tuesday Talks program is continuing. We've got Alan Green on the 26th of April, and we're going to be piloting this as a hybrid talk. So we will have some people in the record office for the talk live for the first time in over 2 years. But we're also going to be live streaming it for audiences at home at the same time. So do check our website for that one, because I think that's also going to be a very interesting talk. And you can find out details of this on all of our website. If you want to catch up with this episode again and take another look at some of these films, it will be up on YouTube, our YouTube channel next week. as will all of our previous episodes. And I'd just like to finish the evening by saying a big thank you to both Frank and Martin for making it such a special evening for us all, and thanking you all as well for joining us. Thank you.